Fairly Sapient here. Today I'm going to review Dusk, and this game is a trip down nostalgia lane, even if it is a fairly recent title. Most desktop and laptop PCs that are fairly recent will have no problems running this game fully maxed out. Dusk has two gameplay modes, Campaign and Endless. In the Campaign, there are 3 episodes which have 11 levels apiece. The only way you can play all of them is to unlock them by beating the levels in order. The Endless gameplay option is 3 levels where the game just sends endless waves of enemies at you. And that's basically it. Oh, Dusk also has a multiplayer component called Dusk World. And this is where you can play other players. And you can either create a server or join a server. It gives you options to look for games, or you can create a server and wait for people to join and play in with you. It has various maps and such. If you go to Customize, it also allows you to change the way you look in-game. And this is in the multiplayer option. This game looks, feels, plays like, and sounds like a cross between Quake and Doom. And most of the gameplay footage is from a fairly modern system, but this game will play on a potato. There'll be more on that later. This game's gameplay reminds me a lot of Quake and somewhat like Doom. You can carry as many weapons as you can find, and there's health packs, lots of them. There's power-ups, and the enemies can sometimes come at you in waves like this, and this is actually a gameplay mechanic of this game. It has something called Endless, and there's 3 stages where they do this endless waves of enemies that you basically have to shoot and kill. The weapon types are definitely reminiscent of Doom and Quake. Except for this crossbow. This kind of reminds me of Heretic, actually, this particular crossbow. The game is very fast-paced in a Doom sort of way. Although you can jump, just like Quake. I haven't tried the rocket launcher jumping yet. You can certainly blow up barrels. That was definitely something you could do in Doom. And you can definitely interact with the environment a little bit. If you can see that in the middle of the screen, that's a power-up that speeds you up. It speeds up your firing rate and your movement speed. That's very much like the old Quake games. And also, when you kill enemies, they leave purple health vials. That's very much like, come to think of it, Unreal Tournament 2004 in a way. They have little tiny health vials, and then you can pick up health packs along the way. One of the other things is, like the old first-person shooters, you have to find keys to open doors to progress through the levels and to progress the storyline. Well, if you can call it that, it's really just progress through the levels. So Dusk is a game that really plays into nostalgia. Even the loading screen is like an old DOS game. The game's settings are fairly similar to other modern titles, especially your not so advanced settings for graphics are fairly run-of-the-mill. Once you go to the advanced settings, however, you'll get a little pixelation setting. It's the second at the bottom, and this is where you'll get a way to make it look older than it really is. and it's kind of interesting. You can try it out, and the way they named it's a little funny and humorous. But you do try those settings out if you want to make it look more nostalgic than it really is. This is what the game looks like without any of the retro pixelation or retro palette turned on. To be honest with you, it's kind of boring this way. This game has an overwhelmingly positive review status on Steam, and it runs in Linux if that appeals to you. This game ends up looking like it's well put together, well programmed, and a lot of work went into it, and in my opinion. It has a great presentation. The gameplay is excellent. The soundtrack really pulls you in. The sound effects make it seem very, very much like an old 90s first-person shooter. It does exactly what it was going for, and it's certainly a fun game to play. Now, the problem that I have with it is that it tries too hard to be those games of the past and doesn't really add to the first-person shooter genre. It plays too much like Doom, too much like Quake, and sometimes even too much like Heretic to really be its own game, and I think that's what this game, Dusk, ends up being, is something that doesn't have its own actual identity as a game. If I want to play those games, I'll just play those old games. I mean, since id Games made their source code basically open source over the years, it's really easy to just play those games on GOG or Steam, etc. That's the only problem I have with this game. That's not to say it's not a good game. It's just, it's not the original. The other thing that it doesn't have going for it is those games, in their own right, especially Doom, were technological marvels. This is just a call back to simpler times in gaming. And, you know, there's a market for that. But sometimes it's better just to go play those old games, in my opinion. This game will run on a potato. No, really. It'll run on a potato. My potato is a low-spec system from the Windows 7 era. There's certainly never been a shortage of low-cost, low-specification laptops, and this is no different. ASUS released this laptop in 2011 and used an obscure AMD APU known as an E450. It's a low power chip that punches above its weight with its integrated graphics, but is still very weak for today's purposes. This game will run on a dual core from 2011 on integrated graphics. It reminds me of playing Doom on a 486 back in the day. So, this game is a lot of fun. It brings back a lot of feelings of nostalgia, and it tries to feel like a classic game. It does pretty well at that. If you like that sort of thing, this is a great game to get. However, I think it's still better to play the actual classics rather than a game like this. But that's just my opinion. So what do you think? Would you rather play the classics or a modern take on the classics? Like and subscribe if you like the video, and comments are always welcome.